Chair recognizes Ms. Porter from California.
Does everyone remember 2008 when the United States caused a global economic meltdown? We were financing our housing market with securitized bonds backed by shady, risky collateral, shady, risky mortgage loans that went bad. And the fallout was terrible. Today, China is setting the world up for a global economic meltdown. How? They are financing their infrastructure with securitized bonds that are backed by risky, lousy collateral. Local governments in China have major expenses. They build massive infrastructure, they deliver public services, and those investments are ballooning in size and price, driven in part by an effort from localities, cities, and provinces to outcompete each other. Now, in China, unlike in the United States, state and local governments cannot assess sales or property tax, and they cannot directly issue bonds. So the Chinese localities don't have those ways to raise money for infrastructure or services. Given this, the Chinese have gotten creative with how to fund their infrastructure. In China, local governments sign over assets like land or stock in government companies to private local government financing platforms. For example, local government might have a 50-year lease on land under a residential high-rise, but that lease and its revenue are collateral for the private financing platform. Now, these platforms are called private, but they are implicitly backed by Chinese state assets as collateral. With all this backing, the local government financing platform borrows money from a bank. The bank loans are bundled together into the bond market. These bonds get a high rating, AAA, because they have the implicit backing of the CCP. This should remind us of what happened here. Our mortgage bonds got really high ratings, even though they were loaded with mortgage loans, subprime, predatory mortgage loans, because they were implicitly backed by our government-sponsored entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Mr. Bethel, what is the greatest risk of this Chinese financing system?
First of all, let me congratulate you on doing a deep dive on what's happening in the Chinese economy.
I would like to recognize my staffer for helping me put this together and myself for making it comprehensible to the American people.
So I'd like to go back to the gentleman from Pennsylvania who asked about why on earth are we investing in China? And so a lot of these bonds are being sold globally and internationally. And so I think we should be aware that there's a ticking time bomb. What concerns me more broadly than this particular issue, well, this particular issue is linked to China has a massive debt crisis, and their economy is decelerating. And what does a Xi Jinping do when the relationship between the government and people is broken, right? There's an implicit pact between the people and the government. The government provides economic opportunity to the people, and the people, in turn, choose not to create a revolution or change.
This is actually not different than our country, I just want to point out. So when things went south here in 2008, we bailed out banks and homeowners. I guess what I'm trying to get at in this specific instance is, and I want to get back to the consequences of all this in a minute, is the value of land. This works so long as the value of this land, of these assets, continues to go up, just like it worked when housing prices in America continued to go up. So it is likely, it is inevitable that prices will not continue to rise. There is a significant property bubble. So like any bubble, the system is not sustainable. And once this batch of long-term urban leases, which began years ago, expires, which is about in the next will start in the next 5 years, there'll be a glut, and leases won't be as valuable. That will cripple the bond market. Mr. Bethel, do you know how large this bond market is?
I can get back to you on that.
Ms. Kissel, do you know?
I don't, but again, I would also like to add my congratulations. It's the first time I've seen Congress take a deep dive like this. It's very important. But you touched on actually what I think could be the solution. You mentioned the rating agencies and the AAA ratings. Congress could act to break up the duopoly of S&P and Moody's and force American investors to do their own due diligence and not outsource their due diligence to rating agencies.
So rating agencies are not perfect. We all saw that in 2008 and 9 and 10 and 11 as the financial crisis continued. Go back to the size of this market. It is trillions of dollars. It is a multi-trillion-dollar time bomb in the middle of the world's second largest economy. I just want to close by explaining to the American people, because I know the witnesses understand this, why should we care? Because I think when we hear, oh, China's economy might go south, well, maybe that's good news for us. It is not. If the Chinese economy collapses, it will reverberate around the world, just like when our housing market, backed by crappy bonds, securitized bonds, collapsed, it reverberated around the world. Our economy will suffer because of these risks. Global companies that rely on Chinese corporations for manufacturing, other supplies will all be hurt. So this is a disaster waiting to happen, and we need to mitigate our risk. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Excellent questions, Ms. Porter.